think that there's a couple different things that happen with ADHD kids. And one of the biggest things I say to parents is, look, the ADHD kid is not going to stop being an ADHD kid, right? And you have to get over some of your embarrassment
Hmm.
because then we tend to overreact. And I talk about this a lot in the book.
Yep.
And when we overreact, then we stop being analytical and we stop looking at this as a journey too, because this is not today we're caterpillar and tomorrow we're a butterfly.
Hmm.
This is a journey.
Right.
And also we're going to slip back. You're going to work on something, and some days your kid is going to be more impulsive, more tired, more whatever, and they're going to slip back, but they can learn over time.
Hmm.
And one of the things I really think is important, and I hate to say this because parents, we always end up, everything's on us. We have to change the way we communicate.
Yep.
Because if we can do that, then we can talk to kids about these social dilemmas and
Yep.
not alienate them. But if we kind of go at it from this sort of nuclear, oh my God, what are you doing? You need to stop. And we all have these moments too, by the way. Every parent, this is what I say, you make mistakes and then you get up tomorrow and you try to do it different.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tony,
And I'm Casey.
and welcome to our podcast on YouTube channel, The Way Forward, a Kindness Mission. And we want to especially welcome those joining us for the first time. It's great to have you with us. We created Anthony's Way, the Road to Kindness, in memory of our son, Anthony, with one mission in mind: to help kids with ADHD to thrive. Through expert care and compassionate guidance, we've developed a supportive roadmap for parents, one that helps them better understand both ADHD and their child. With our YouTube channel and podcast, we bring expert voices and practical insights to families so they can navigate their ADHD journey with clarity, confidence, and most of all, kindness. August is back to school month, and it's an important time for our families. It can be a happy time or it can be a challenging time. Our goal this month is to bring you experts that understand the feelings and to provide you with tips and expert advice on how to prepare so that it can be a wonderful time for your child as they go back to school.
So today's guest is Caroline Maguire.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Caroline. She's a leading ADHD coach, speaker, and author of the acclaimed book, Why Will No One Play With Me?
Oh!
Caroline's work focuses on one of the most important yet often overlooked challenges for kids with ADHD, making and keeping friendships. She's here to help us understand the social struggles these kids face and how we, as parents, educators, and allies, can help them build confidence, connection, and true belonging. Caroline is also the director of Fundamentals of ADHD Coaching for Families with the ADD Coach Academy. She's been instrumental in helping us identify coaches for all the families that have reached out to us needing help for their child, and now with the children that we are sponsoring. We thank Caroline for her guidance and for caring so much to get the right ADHD-like coaches for these wonderful families. Welcome again, Caroline.
Welcome, Caroline.
Hi, everybody.
And we have to really, I got to thank you again. You've been just marvelous to work with. So the way this thing works is we get people calling us, and I send an email over to Caroline, and typically within 2 days, she gets back to me with 3 or 4 coaches for the family and the child in the locale. And we've been across all the states pretty much, and then we've even been in Australia, South Africa, Canada, and UK. So, Caroline, you've been awesome, and we really appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Well, no problem. I love your mission. I think that so many of us who are sort of north of 30, there was no ADHD coaching. And it's a great program that you've put together. The coaches that I have referred to love working with your families and have, even reached out to me and said, if Anthony's Way needs anyone else, and they have plenty of clients. It's not about that. They really love the families, and the families are very wonderful and receptive.
Good.
And I think for those of us who have had coaching, if you have ADHD, it's an incredible resource to help you build those life skills.
Sure is.
Absolutely.
Sure is.
That's why y'all are the coaches were the first people that we got into place with David. We're like, we got to have the coaches first. The coach is the quarterback,
So tell us your story. Tell us how you got involved in coaching. Tell us how you wrote this wonderful book that's just been acclaimed by all. And give us your story, Caroline, so everybody can hear.
I think it starts with I was a sort of old soul kid. I was a quirky kid. We didn't know I had ADHD at the time. We didn't even know I had dyslexia. And I have a spatial relations learning disability, which basically means that even though my car tells you how to back up into a parking space, I cannot parallel park. That is how it impacts my life as a 50-year-old. But I was really quirky and I didn't really have any friends. And I was sort of, one of those kids who I could academically soar, but I really struggled with friendship. And I was in a tiny little school, and there were 2 girls in my class. I only had 2 girls in my class, and they were both my bullies.
No.
And so I had a really hard time. I was bullied pretty much daily. It was very physical. It wasn't just the sort of subtle, and I'm not saying this isn't awful, but this sort of exclusion that a lot of kids experience. That's terrible. I see it every day, and I wish I could wave a wand and end it. But it was very physical. It was very much something that happened all the time. And I'm an 80s kid, so parents didn't really intervene as much back then.
Right.
And I don't think teachers kind of understood the mental health implications of this. Like, it just was a different time.
Yeah, wow.
Many times when people read Why Will No One Play With Me, they reach out because there is a story of my bullying in there, and they say, oh, like, did your teachers, try to separate you? And I'm like, nope, it's not how it was. And so, for 7th grade, though, I switched schools. I went to a different school, and I was very, very good at drama. So when I joke to you that I'm the original Scarlett O'Hara, that's part of it. I was the dramatic kid.
I give that to you.
And I did a ton of drama. And by the time I went to 7th grade, I had been in tons of plays with adults, even, like, not just at school. And I had won awards for being in plays. And I could do accents, which, by the way, don't go to school talking in a British accent. That is not a way to make friends and influence people. And I really wanted a fresh start, but I didn't know how to connect with other kids my age. I would spend every afternoon at my grandparents' house. I was just with adults all the time. I really had no idea. And I'm an only child. So I didn't have siblings. I didn't have any of that. So a teacher actually took me aside and sort of told me, like, you got to learn about pop culture, you got to do certain things. And I really was like, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it, And she was super supportive. She used to let me come to her room like every Friday afternoon and like talk to her. And she was like a sort of a school psychologist, but it wasn't formal. It wasn't like, oh, they identify you and they pull you aside. It was just, she sort of knew I was a kid who was struggling, even at this new school. And things really started to change for me. And part of what started to change too was that I was in the honors track. So a lot of my bullies were not. And so then I started to also separate from them. So I had that physical space of like, I didn't have to be with them anymore. Things started to get better for me. And I really did sort of try to work really hard on my social game. And when I was first working with ADHD kids, I was in staffing early out of college, and I worked for Johnson & Johnson. I had a bunch of jobs. And then I read an article in the New York Times about ADHD coaching. And at the time, my husband was in business school, and we were kind of like, we can barely take care of a dog. Like, how would we ever have, like, I was on a plane constantly. He was on a plane. We were like, how would we ever have children? How would we ever have a life? So I wanted to switch careers. And when I read the article, I thought I would be really good at this. And I had been diagnosed when I was like 25 with ADHD. I had been diagnosed when I was 12, but they told my parents not to worry about it, that I was a girl and I would outgrow it. And so my parents remediated my learning disabilities. Like, they did everything. I had tutors, I had everything, but they didn't do anything about my ADHD because they thought she's going to outgrow it. And every once in a while, my mother used to say to me, it's supposed to go away, but you're still so messy. Like, why hasn't it gone away? So when I read that article, I was also like, my mom used to take me to tutors And they would say she doesn't really need the tutoring, but what she was looking for were those executive functions, those life skills, right? And so she would take me to people like throughout, sort of the 90s, right? And they would be like, oh, like she doesn't really need me. So, and I had gone to therapists about my anxiety, but the core of my anxiety was like all the stuff I couldn't remember and couldn't get done. And they didn't really know what to do to help me other than, talk about your feelings and your emotions or whatever. So, which is helpful, but it's not as helpful as like, how do I learn to focus and get stuff done, right? So when I read the article about ADHD coaching, I was like, I would be really good at this. And I would like to do this. And this is like what my mom was looking for, like she was looking for this. She just didn't have the words,
Yeah.
And so I went to school, retrained with David, and I left my big job and I was like a vice president of staffing. Like it was a huge leap. I was like, what am I doing? And I started working for Ned Hollowell like within 6 months of leaving the ADD Coach Academy.
Great.
Yeah.
But I instantly found that all the kids I was working with, and I was doing more academics, more, how do you get stuff done? They didn't have friends. And one day a little boy said what he wanted to know was, why will no one play with me? And I'm one of those people that and I really think you're like this too, Anthony. Yeah. When people say there's no solution, it really bugs me. And I'm like, there is a solution. And that's what people were saying back then. So this is 2005. People were like, kids just don't have friends. Some kids can't make friends. Some people aren't social. And I was like, that's kind of bananas. Yeah. Like, you're basically condemning a huge percentage of the ADHD population to just, they're going to be lonely and miserable. And that's what these kids care about. They didn't care about the academics.
No, they want to be with people.
That's it. They want to be connection. Connection's so important.
So I started running social groups with a therapist there at Hollowell Center. And I went back and I got my master's because I had the idea that if I could write a book to help parents help their kid, then even if you couldn't afford a coach, you could read the book. But I knew I needed credentials. So I got my master's, and that took me a few years because it was part-time. And I basically worked on all of the structures that went into Why Will No One Play With Me. And I saw just tons of kids. I didn't have kids back then too. So I was just like working all the time. It was a machine. And then once the book came out a few years ago, I had always worked with adults, but now I see tons more adults because to help the kids, I need to help the parents. So my next book is actually going to be friendship skills for neurodivergent adults.
Oh, good.
And that comes out in April. And the reason is that the adults need the help to help their kid.
Right.
So nice.
That's what I love the way that you wrote this book because it is a kind of a guide, for parents,
we wish we had this.
Absolutely. The only thing we kind of were chuckling when we were going through it because you said something about making the rules for a play date, and I'm like, oh,
play dates.
We were supposed to make rules for a play date. We didn't know that.
We didn't tell Anthony that he needed.
We didn't set him up before he went into play dates. We just kind of set them up and let him go.
But it fits so perfectly, and kids are so challenged. They're still challenged today. So what things can help kids today get over the hump, and parents to help their child to be more social, more friendly, or just keep friends? I mean, the hardest part for Anthony was that people would be his friend. He'd be the first one to meet the child for a friend, or whoever was coming to school first, make a friend, but then within a week they were gone. And he didn't do anything that we saw that really chased anybody away, but it's the friends weren't coming. So,
and that's a very common thing. And one of the things I would say to parents is if they're trying, and there's a part of Why Will No One Play With Me that is very much about sort of diagnosing like what's going on.
Right.
Talk to coaches, talk to teachers. It's painful, right? It's painful to hear these things. Siblings, if the sibling can be nice and not go to the other sibling and say, hey, I just talked about you to my mom, blah, blah, blah. it can be very useful to get a sibling's perspective. I'm in the lunchroom with them. I'm only a couple years older than them. This is what happens. And I find there's sort of a couple patterns. One, ADHD kids do stuff to alienate other kids.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go along with the game. They constantly want to change the game.
Yeah.
They do sort of the impulsive behavior stuff.
Yep.
But there's a whole nother side that I think we forget about sometimes, that especially affects girls and inattentive ADHD kids, which is I don't kind of engage in socialization.
Right.
I kind of don't always talk because I don't feel like talking, right? I don't play certain games, and this was definitely my problem because I was like, I don't want to play your rowdy game, right? But sometimes you have to play games in order to like be with people, right? We all do, right?
Right.
And so I think that there's a couple different things that happen with ADHD kids. And one of the biggest things I say to parents is, look, the ADHD kid is not going to stop being an ADHD kid, right? And you have to get over some of your embarrassment because then we tend to overreact. And I talk about this a lot in the book.
Yep.
And when we overreact, then we stop being analytical and we stop looking at, this as a journey too, because this is not today we're, a caterpillar and tomorrow we're a butterfly. This is a journey.
Right.
And also we're going to slip back. You're going to work on something and some days your kid is going to be more impulsive, more tired, more whatever, and they're going to slip back, but they can learn over time. And one of the things I really think is important, and I hate to say this because parents, we always end up, everything's on us. We have to change the way we communicate.
Yep.
Because if we can do that, then we can talk to kids about these social dilemmas and not alienate them. But if we kind of go at it from this sort of nuclear, oh my God, what are you doing? You need to stop. And we all have these moments too, by the way. Every parent, this is what I say, you make mistakes and then you get up tomorrow and you try to do it different.
Yeah.
Right? We all make these, every parent yells, every parent loses it. Please, when people say they don't, like experts, I'm like, come on, come on.
We
please.
did.
We did.
Well, I do too. I mean, there's times where I get frustrated with my kids and I feel, like overwhelmed by them, or I say something that I shouldn't say. We all do it.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is to get the kid to see what they're doing and how the social game works, which is part of it. Maybe they don't intuitively know it. We have to be able to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
And when we blame and shame, of course, the kid's deflector shield goes up and they say, I don't want to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
What we found really cool, Caroline, in the book was, and it relates so well to Anthony, is that you have to find maybe the opposite. Like Anthony was very, very, bouncing around, wanting to go. But his group of social friends, as he overcame some of these bullies that he had, just like
when he became the social director for his friends.
His friends weren't very active, and
they were very quiet.
He brought them out, and that's the mesh that it's trying to.
That was his
blend
group.
These together.
Yeah.
I think I found that like so powerful.
Yeah, that was like a light bulb going off. It's like,
it hit
God.
so well for us.
I think one of the pieces of advice that's not in Why Will No One Play With Me, because I don't know that I knew it back then, or I hadn't, cemented it, you're hitting on, which is find high interest, right? Because interest is our fuel with ADHD kids.
Right.
High interest activities that your kid joins where they're going to meet like-minded kids or opposite kind of kids, right? But kids who accept them, right? Those kids were like, oh, thank God, Anthony's there to talk. Anthony's there to have energy, right?
Yes. Right.
And then you have a shared experience, right? So one of the dilemmas for ADHD kids is we really don't do as well often on a team. So it doesn't have to be that we're on a team, we're doing, parents are probably saying, well, I tried these different things, but if we join some high interactive activities, right? So think about if you're on yearbook, that's highly interactive. If you work in the radio station, if your school has a radio station, highly interactive with other kids.
Yeah.
Things that allow them to find other kids, they're having that shared experience. Remember when you've ever worked for someone who was like a terrible boss? Don't you become friends with all the people in the office because you are in the trenches together and somehow you become friends? Like I've had that experience.
Yeah.
If you are in interactive activities that are high interest, you're gonna bond, you're gonna have shared experience, and you're gonna have the opportunity to make friends. And that's kind of what you're hitting on that happened for Anthony, is like he got to be with people who appreciated him.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you say, I noted when you say have a conversation, with your child to kind of set the play date up and some expectations and things like that, like how young do they really understand, like what age would you start talking to them about, things that they could try to work on as they're having their play dates and stuff like that? Because it seems like that would be maybe for a little bit older, like maybe not a 5-year-old.
I talk to 5-year-olds because I'm like, what does it mean to be a good friend?
Okay.
What does it mean to be kind?
Okay.
Right? Kids know the word kindness now. They do, because it's in the schools. What does it look like to be kind? Can you tell me about what kind is? Who's not a good friend? They always dish on that. They're like, oh, so-and-so, not nice. Yeah. What happens if you don't play the games other people want to play? And they're like, and even if they don't follow this advice, they are able to tell you,
okay,
people don't like it, right?
Okay.
So then I always play dumb. I'm like, do you sometimes not play the games other people play? Do you sometimes maybe leave the game? And they're like, maybe, right? Because unlike teenagers, they don't have the artifice of like pretending and all that stuff. So you can definitely talk to little ones. It's easier as they get older to have more of a full conversation.
Right.
But I think, the key is like, I'm not blaming and shaming. Like when I talk to them, I'm like, my goal is to be a good friend. My goal is to have friends and be a good friend. Yeah. Like, what would that look like? And then I always try to use this phrase, we're all working on something. And I would really encourage families that it's not just the ADHD kid who's working on stuff.
Right.
Every kid in that family can be working on stuff. The ADHD kid might need to work on the social stuff, but another kid might need to work on being kind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What is it about ADHD kids that makes them have so much trouble with friendships? What is it? Why is it ADHD kids?
I think there's a few reasons. Studies show that ADHD kids have less perspective taking than other kids. So, stepping into someone's shoes, understanding their perspective, understanding how they're going to react to things. I don't think that universally means we can't, but I think sometimes we don't pause to pay attention to it. Right?
That's right.
Right.
And that's important, especially as you get older, because friends get done with you kind of not reading the room. Right?
Right.
I think that a lot of ADHD kids do say things in a really blunt manner, and other kids kind of are sort of jarred by it, or they get over time, they expect you to evolve and you don't. There's impulsive behaviors that kind of alienate other kids. I also think a lot of ADHD kids struggle with sort of their emotional regulation piece, and especially for girls, and the social being so fast, such dynamics, so many things going on. If you are struggling with your emotions, whether it's that you shut down and you don't talk, or that you're sort of, always, bringing big emotions into things, it makes it harder with those dynamics. And there's also an immaturity about some ADHD kids. We know that they're 3 to 5 years behind maturity-wise in many cases.
Right.
So one thing that we found really interesting was, and I think you used to do it all the time, is go on the play date with and watch your child how they play, and then you could. Now we
always had the play dates at our house, so that I could manage.
So Casey,
especially in the younger years,
she'd reach over and grab Anthony out of a bad situation sometimes. So which was good.
Which probably not the right thing to do, because I probably embarrassed him. But but yeah.
Well, hindsight's 20/20, right?
Exactly.
So you didn't have any guidance, you didn't know what to do. But yeah, one of my tips in the book is to host the play date.
Yeah.
because then you can set up the environment and also have short play dates.
Yeah.
So many parents write me, because I still get tons of emails from parents, even though it's been 6 years since Wild No Play With Me came out. And they're like, I wanted them to go on like a 4-hour play date. And I'm like, oh dear God, no. Like that's a really long play date. Just like have short conversations about stuff.
Yeah.
Don't sit the kid down at the kitchen counter and lecture at them for an hour. Make it a short little conversation. Make it the short a play date as you can get away with for their age group, because otherwise it's harder for the ADHD kid to sort of do the things we want them to do and that we're working on.
Right.
But I love hosting it.
Yeah.
And setting up the environment. And I think you can explain to other parents, my kid just doesn't do well at, these jumpy places or whatever. Could we have it here and then we can go somewhere else next time or something?
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. What we found happen with him is if he did go to somebody else's house to play, the chances are he probably wasn't going to be invited back. And I never did talk to the parents about it. I just felt bad for him, that it was happening. And then if I would call the parent and say, hey, can so-and-so come over and play? The answer usually was no. So that was tough. That was tough on me. There were lots of tears from mom, on those situations. Yeah.
It's really tough. It's really tough. And also, I think the thing we have to remember that sort of drives me bonkers about play dates and why I wish that we could go back to the way things used to be is that play dates, a lot of parents want the easy kids for the play date. They want the kid who doesn't require any work. And that's not always the ADHD kid. That's why we need to host. And then the other thing that happens, I think, is that if our kid doesn't know how to navigate the different situations, right? They just don't have the skills.
Right.
Then it doesn't go well. And then, there's some compassionate, kind, wonderful people who say, you know what, this kid is a really good kid. And I think if we just tweaked it this way, things would go better.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't do that. And it's because they're busy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it. And I don't think as many people as I'd like are great about sort of, helping the kids on the play date out. Oh, balloons.
Hello, party. Are you having a party over there?
No, I don't know.
Yeah,
so it's very all your experiences are very common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the struggles kind of show up the same in young kids as in like teenagers. Like they all kind of have the similar struggles.
Yeah, it's just little people, little struggles, big people, big struggles, right? And the dynamics change a bit. But I think one of the things that happens is that as kids get older, they're expected to plan their own social life. But that takes a lot of executive function.
It does.
Well, surprisingly, Anthony was the social director for his group. He planned, and even with his his deficit in executive functioning, like because he liked being with people, and so he just got his group of friends and they did stuff together all the time.
Yeah.
He got them all to join ski club with him so that he would have somebody to sit with on the bus going to ski club. Even though none of them skied or snowboarded, he got like 5 of his friends to join so that he could have them there with him because nobody else would sit with them.
Do you see that happen though a lot with he hit a turning point where it was like 13, 14, where that started kicking in, where he kind of knew who he could relate well with. Do you see that a lot with kids? Is that as they get there's a point here like where they start seeing some light, right? And you feel good about that.
Yeah, I think a couple things can happen. I think one, I wouldn't wait without intervention because a lot of times it doesn't happen because they don't have the skills and they don't have the skills at 13 and they don't have the skills at 9.
Okay.
But I do think one thing that can happen is that probably Anthony changed his game. And maybe if it was subtle, you didn't notice or you weren't there to see, but he probably changed the way he was doing things. And the other thing is, as kids go into these larger schools, they do have more opportunity to find their people.
They do. We found that. Yep.
And so that does make things a little easier because, I'll just take my personal town. There's no robotics in elementary school. There's certain things that don't exist in elementary school. Well, a lot of kids that I work with, they're like the robotics kids. Like they're the engineering kid. They're the kid who would find their people in those settings, not in soccer or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they go into middle school, suddenly there's all these activities and clubs that they can join. There's also a couple of schools coming together, right?
Right.
And so they have more opportunity. That doesn't mean the social struggle is going to go away, because plenty of those kids still struggle. And so I definitely encourage parents to take the book, read the book, help the kid with things.
Yep.
But I definitely also think in terms of opportunity, there's so much more. And part of the struggle in life for all of us is finding your people. And if you have more places where your people might be, that makes life a lot better.
Sure does.
Mm-hmm.
So girls and boys are different, right? So how can parents help their daughter who is more isolated maybe and not coming out or going out or doing stuff? What can parents do? How can they navigate that situation?
I think one of the biggest things is confidence. So I really think that one of the things that affects ADHD kids when they start hitting those preteen and teen years is that they've been rejected so much, or they've been criticized so much, that they have a much harder time. Being social takes confidence, right? Like you have to have the confidence to believe, right, that what you're going to do is going to work out. So one of the first things I would do for any kid, but especially, for a daughter, is I would help them do something with their strengths every single day. And I've lived this. Drama saved me. Yeah. I didn't have a great day, but at 3:30 I went to the theater, and therefore my day got better, right? And I knew that was coming. I just had to live through the rest of the day.
Right.
I also think in terms of finding their people, one of the things that you want to do is help kids learn, especially middle and high school, how to make conversation. Because girls have a lot of that dynamic of back and forth conversations, fast-paced conversations, talking about interests. And a lot of my ADHD clients, they just don't know how to talk to other kids and how to make conversation. They're also not confident about it. Right? I had a client tonight and I said to her, "You just made the funniest joke. You should make more jokes." And she said to me, "I'm not funny." Yeah, you are, right? So all that, like, it's like a combined thing, right? And finally, going back, high interest activities with high interactive opportunities. Because if you can join something that is your people, then your chances are so much higher. One of the dilemmas my clients face, though, and parents are going to face, and you can use the conversation piece of Wild Know and Play With Me to help you with this, is their people are robotics. They think their people are football.
Right.
Okay.
Disconnect.
Yeah. And that can be where I have tons of stuff about this on my website. You can use the conversation guide to kind of have a conversation about it. That's the hard part, I think, sometimes with teenagers, that their view of self or who they want to be, you're like, football, what? Cheerleading, what? And they want that because they want to be that person. And then they're not with their people, right? Not that there's anything wrong with football or cheerleading. Like, all my cousins played football, but they were football people, and they are very ADHD, but they had that was their sport, their game. If it's not, and if you've never played, then that's not necessarily the place for you.
Yeah. So that's beautiful. So we're coming up here. We got back to school, right? So obviously, a couple of weeks left, and kids are going back. So what are the strategies that parents today, like at 2 weeks to go, what can parents do to really help their child? Should they be talking with their child, boy or girl, about some of these things? Who's their partner, what are the things they like to do, so they can, like drama, etc. Should they have those conversations? And do you think a lot of parents do have those conversations?
I think a lot of parents want to have the conversation, but the way we have the conversation tends to be either to demand that they're going to join something, which backfires because then they get their back up, or they try to talk about it and the kid sort of runs from the room or says, I don't want to. And that's why I have a lot in the book about how to sit down and have a conversation and sort of say, we have a problem and we have a dilemma. And, you know, I would set a precedent for your family. We all do stuff. We all do stuff. Every kid in this family is going to do something to move their body, right? Because we have to be healthy.
Right.
And they're going to do something, you know, to join something. And you can pick, right? And here's the buffet of activities. And I'm going to guide you, right? And we're going to talk about who are your people. But I would set it as like, what activity are you going to join? But in a collaborative way and not an autocratic way. Yeah. But I think, and don't be surprised if the kid says no or runs from the room. And the reason is they're afraid.
Sure.
They're afraid. Yeah. But I have everything in the book about how to handle that. And I think it's really important to have these conversations and, you know, to say like, because some kids want to come home and they want to go to the basement and they want to play video games for 12 hours.
Right.
Yeah, and the more we sort of set it up as, nope, you know, everyone's going to do something, everyone's going to have an activity, you know, and like set that up as an expectation, the more when they get older, it won't be as much of a fight. It'll be part of the expectation.
Yeah, that's cool.
So how do we help kids manage the emotions that come with the social rejection or feeling different? Because like I said, we had a lot of tears, you know, and I used to feel bad for Anthony, you know, instead of talking to him about it, I just felt bad for him. So how can parents handle their kids, help their kids handle these big emotions?
So I'm going to go back one step.
Okay.
So one of the things in the books is called the flavors of friendship, and it is about all the different levels of friendship. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happens a lot with ADHD kids, I find, and I'm not saying we're not rejected, but sometimes kids take something as a rejection that is like, they weren't your friends, they were acquaintances, they were buddies, they were people you said hello to. You're expecting them to want to hang out with you, but you've never shown any interest in them before. You've barely talked to them, right? So I would start with the flavors of friendship, talking about friendship in general, and talking about the different levels of friendship. Because one of the things I think that trips us up and leads to us feeling more rejection is that we're calling someone a friend who's really an acquaintance.
Right.
So good.
Right.
That's so right. Yeah.
And then I would, if they're dealing with a lot of rejection, which a lot of us are, I would try to talk to them about how are they feeling, what can they do to manage those emotions. I have a lot of exercises about naming your emotion. And I think that, again, what can they do to make them feel better about themselves?
Right.
Right? Like, what strength-based activity? Because the more you're doing things in your house of strengths, the less you care about the opinion of others.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's so right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the flavors of friendship.
I do too. Yeah. I do too. Yeah, I remember at the ADHD conference, you and Jessica did a nice talk on friendship, and that really, it made a lot of sense. It really made a lot of sense.
So while this is directed at kids, this is also directed at adults too.
I mean, it 100% is.
I mean, flavors. I mean, acquaintances versus friends. I mean,
right.
You know, it's such a big difference, and sometimes we don't always get it either. You know? Yeah.
And, you know, one of the ways Jessica McCabe is who you're referring to from How to ADHD, one of the ways that she's been really helpful to me is she'll, like, when I'm writing my new book, she was like, do you have such and such in there? And I was like, you know, I don't. And she was like, no, that's one of the best things you ever taught me. Go put that back in. So, you know, she was really helpful in the sense that she kind of, you know, I would talk about things and she would tell me things that were really helpful. And, you know, as an adult, as a human, there is a tendency for us as ADHDers to imbue the qualities of a friend with someone who's just an acquaintance. Absolutely. And then we expect a lot from them. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm just thinking of like, as you get to be a mature adult, our parents get older, our parents get sick. If someone's your friend, you know, maybe they come with you to different things, or they take your phone call when you're, you know, at the nursing home or what have you. Mm. But if they're an acquaintance, they're not going to offer the same level of support. And that's like a more extreme example, obviously, but I think that happens with kids and teens and adults too, is that we're expecting someone to help us through whatever problem or to be there for us. But if they're just a buddy, if they're just somebody you say hello to, they're not going to be as there for you because that's not their role.
Right.
So I think it's really important to help kids understand and also to model it. So if you have a propensity toward like just tons of acquaintances and not deeper friendships, then your kid is going to model, it's going to see that model, and that's what they're going to do too.
Yeah. That's so true.
It is. So I want to back up for a minute because there was a question I forgot to ask you. If you have a play date at your house and your child is wanting to take over and run everything, and you can tell the other kid is not having a good time, how can you pull your child away from that situation without embarrassing him?
So there's a couple things. I love to set up code words.
Okay.
Especially for sort of systemic problems. I would talk about those. If those are systemic problems that have happened on every play date, I would talk about it ahead of time. And I would talk about, how people feel. And I have an exercise in the book called Pile of Choices, where I have kids show how many choices they made on the play date and how many choices the other kid made.
Yeah.
And then I love code words so that you could go up to the kid and say, like clown, like you're kind of doing it. I also think that if you can pull them aside subtly, good. If you can't, I wouldn't embarrass them.
Right.
If they're older. If they're little, like kids expect parents to pull them aside and stuff. But if they're older, I wouldn't embarrass them. But I think if you've set it up ahead of time and you really focus on that, don't focus on everything, focus on the major problem like that. I think that they will endeavor, and you set up how are things going to be different, right? And sometimes it means you have set up a series of games, or you've taken off the table a favorite game. A lot of how that happens is favorite games, favorite things they only want to own, they only want to play with, or they want to dominate. Mm-hmm. And also there's an exercise in the book, Good Winner, Good Loser, where you play board games with your kid. And you model for them and talk through emotions when they get too, in this case, too domineering, too emotional, too bossy, and like how you're literally coaching them and teaching them as they're playing the games, so that they learn like how do I pivot, how do I do things differently.
Yeah. That's a great one.
It really is. Yeah. So let's move into school situations and teachers. Mm-hmm. Okay, what can parents do to really help show the support what's your approach for the parent talking to the teacher? My son or daughter has these social anxiety, social issues, whatever it might be, to get help from the teachers, and how can we guide them?
So a few things. One of the sort of advice that I've always gotten from parents that I've always used is be a volunteer in the school if you can. Mm-hmm. Have them know you as more than just a person coming to drop off, coming to pick up. Volunteer, and I'm the one who raised the money for all of the stand-up desks at my school, and I was writing Why Will No One Play With Me, and I had a 3-year-old at home. It wasn't like I had time. But that way the principal was then willing to listen to me when I said, hey, we need to do some other things. I think that the other advice I would give too is that I would write a note to the school as we start school, and I would explain the things that you're concerned about. If you're getting your child any kind of support outside of school, you're getting them an ADHD coach, you're bringing them to a social group, that is great to put in the letter, because one of the things that teachers I find are very appreciative of is, we're in this together. I'm not just dumping this on you.
Right.
So if you're doing something, say, taking my child to a speech pathologist on my own dime, and we're working with a book. I'm reading this book called Why Will No One Play With Me, and I'm trying to work on this with my kid.
Right.
And I also would say too that one of the magic words that I think, I want it to be true. I don't want to just use it. But since the pandemic, a lot of schools are more listening if you explain your child's level of anxiety. So a lot of ADHD kids have anxiety. It's affecting their friendships. In the past, no one cared. But since the pandemic, because they are concerned about mental health problems, I do find that if you explain to them that like such and such is causing anxiety, and of course I do want it to be true, don't just use this, it does help them to be more responsive. I also think that they always say you can't pick classes or that the kid has at least one friend in their class. Yet I have magically made that happen every year.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things
helpful.
you want to do is if there are opportunities like that, usually it's in the spring, to write a letter and request certain friends. Just pick a couple people. It can't be everybody, in the whole world. But to say, I want to make sure my child is with at least one friend.
Yeah, that's great.
And if your child has any kind of education plan, then you have a lot more opportunity to orchestrate that stuff.
Yeah. So that part is so powerful because we took Anthony out of one school and put him into public setting. And one of his best friends just so happened was in his reading and math class.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing that happened, the clicking and the friendship. So it's so important. You hadn't thought about it until you said that.
Right.
How important that is to have a friend in your class, someone that you could look to. So that was a turning point, I think, for our son.
I think so too, because he was always embarrassed because he had learning disabilities also. So he was embarrassed about being taken out of class, for certain things and all of that. And when he saw that his friend was having to do that too, because he was the only one that was being taken out, which he needed to be there. There wasn't any choice to do that, but that made him feel better. He's like, oh yeah, well he's
there too.
This friend has to be there too. So so then he made fun. He made it a fun thing. So
yeah, I like that, and I think look, as a kid who was kind of in a situation that wasn't great, I do want to say go with your parent gut. If you feel like this is not a good situation and you could change it for a better situation, and believe me, I know that takes resources. I know that it takes time. I know it takes a lot of things. I would go with your gut.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents do, but I think a lot of parents also hesitate because of what other people will say, or people might think why are we doing this? If someone could have lifted me out of the situation I was in, it would have been a lot better. So, sometimes kids are just in the wrong place. The teachers aren't supportive. It's not neuroaffirming. If you have that in your gut and you have an idea of what to do, I can't even say enough, do it. Because so many times that environment and that situation makes a huge difference.
We agree, 100%.
So you go through, you're watching your child now, as a family looking at this thing. When you try to do all the right stuff, when should you reach out for additional help? When is it expert help, an ADHD coach, a therapist? When is the right time?
If it were up to me, I would do it from the time that they are small, because when kids have extra help and it's just part of their lives, and they understand their brain and they understand what they need from their brain, it just becomes part of their fabric. They don't even think about it anymore. It's like, this is what I do,
Right.
I'm not even saying you have to do it 100 sessions or for years and years and years when they're little. Maybe it's just a few sessions. But I think to bring in resources and help, the big litmus test for me is also if they cannot engage in the age appropriate activities of their same age peers, right? Then that means that they probably have some struggles. And the sooner we get them help, the sooner we save their self-esteem.
So true. I love that. Yeah, that's why our whole philosophy and our whole practice is built on starting early.
Yep. as
we
early as
want
we
to help
can.
because that self-esteem is so critical that we want to keep that before it goes down. We want to, help the kids. So, yeah, it's cool.
Are there any success stories from your coaching work that you can share with us?
Sure. I mean, absolutely.
Okay. How many share?
And can I just say one other thing on the topic we were just on?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of schools will say or force you into a situation where they say, let them fail. Let them fail. And here's what I want to say. People who say that have never failed at anything. Yeah. I've failed and I've had to come back from failure. And yeah, it builds character, yada yada, but it's hard.
It's hard.
So I don't want kids to fail out of college to learn lessons. I don't want them to fail the 7th grade. It's hard to come back from that, and some kids don't.
Yeah.
Some kids, it starts a negative spiral. So people are going to say stuff to you. I'll just tell a quick story. My son was little. He didn't really speak. And he was obviously very smart. And then I got him speech help. And then he spoke, right? And people would come up to me, even after he was, better and doing great. And they would say, well, Albert Einstein didn't speak till he was 5 or something. And I was like, do you know if Albert Einstein was like a well-adjusted, happy person? I don't, right? And people were full of advice. I've been there as a parent. You know what? It's not easy to come back from failure.
No.
So, people are saying stuff all over. Listen to the professionals, right? And I don't even mean teachers. With due respect to teachers, my family's full of teachers. A lot of teachers don't understand ADHD, and they don't understand learning disabilities, and they don't understand autism. So I'm talking about medical professionals, psychiatrists, ADHD experts. Like, if they say stuff like the Albert Einstein, I literally have heard that like 100 times. I'm like, why are you saying this? Like, if the kid can't speak, how are they supposed to engage in preschool? Like, that's preposterous to me. So I think like that's the thing I want to empower parents is like, don't wait just because somebody on your block says like, oh, they're always telling me to people who dropped out of college, like the Facebook guy. I'm like, okay, great. He's a genius. Like, that doesn't matter to me. Yeah. So I just want to say, like, go with your mommy gut. The other question was about, what was the other question?
Success stories.
Success. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can tell you, I had a student once who was in high school, really struggling, bullied relentlessly. I mean, even like ended up in the hospital. He was beaten up so bad by some other kids. And he really just didn't know how to make friends. And he was such a nice kid. I always say he was the first kid when it would snow to shovel snow for his neighbors, right? So you knew he was just such a good soul, but he alienated kids. He did stuff that, was very immature, and, kids don't have patience. It's too bad, but they don't. And we worked on things. This was like before Wild No Play With Me came out. We worked on things. His parents were awesome. They were so supportive. We worked together. And, he started to have the realization of, I have to, when people say stop, I have to stop kind of thing. He just had all these realizations. And then he actually started going to a gym because we were like, can't play video games all day, have to do stuff. Yep. And some boys at the gym, because he was a very large kid, said, you know what, you should come out for football. He got to know them. He got to joke around with them. He got to be friendly with them. Nice. And they said, why don't you come out for football? Because, you're
a big guy.
You're a big guy.
Right.
And he started playing football. And it wasn't the playing football. It was being part of a team, making friends. And then the other thing that happened was he had lost sort of his best friend. And one of the reasons he wanted to work with me was that he had done something and his friend had sort of said, I don't like this, I don't want you to do this. And he had kept going. And then his friend had sort of said, I'm breaking up with you. And he got his friend back.
Oh, yay.
And they started, always being together. And he just started having so he had that close friend, which is what we all want, right? Okay. And then he had these football boys. And it was just one of my greatest moments because I also, I've had this happen hundreds of times, but I always think of it because he had that moment when someone kind of forgives you and is kind and allows you back in.
Right.
And what I found too, and I always talk about this, was he was able to change his image. So people always say, oh, can you change your image? If you do the stuff and Why Will No One Play With Me and you change your social game, will people give you a chance? Yes. Yeah, they will. And it's funny, just as I feel like kids can be not kind and they cannot, be as forgiving as I'd like them to be,
Right.
they also can say, oh, he's changed. So-and-so's changed. They're different now, and so I've witnessed that hundreds of times. And that's one of the stories, though, I think of when I think of that, because he really was able to change his destiny.
Yeah, that's great. What a great story. Good for him.
That's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you still in touch with him at all?
I am. He had a great family, one of those families that, I just was, really collaborative with the parents. And, I send out paper Christmas cards still to certain ex-clients. And I always get, a long note back. Sometimes I've had the parents show up to book signings and stuff of mine. And so I definitely am still in touch with them. And, I love hearing, and just the other day, someone hit me up on LinkedIn and they were like, you may not remember me, but like, I worked with you 15 years ago. And I was like, of course I remember you. And they were like telling me all about their career. And I was so happy, because it was like, oh, the full circle.
Yeah,
Yes.
Really making a difference in the lives of these kids. Absolutely.
You do us a favor, send that young boy a hug from Anthony's Way to Road to Kindness. Okay.
I will.
That's really special. I mean, we've seen turnarounds. We've seen kids that we've talked to so many. We see kids that are struggling and kids turn around, and sometimes it only takes one person to make a difference. It really does, and there's power in that. Just somebody to care.
Actually, all the resilience research shows that it is one caring adult that actually makes a difference, and it doesn't have to be a parent. It can be a coach. It can be a teacher. It can be, an uncle or an aunt. Yeah. And, as an adult, I'm sure if we all look back at stories, I know I have a really good friend who lost his father when he was 12, and his uncle he was a pilot. He flew every weekend to see this kid, to make a difference in his life. So, there's people who do stuff where they're your relative, and then there's coaches and people who do stuff for you. And it really does only take one person. And a lot of the research shows that, but I've also seen it in real life,
Yeah, so touching. So you said you have a new book coming out. Just share with everybody what the new book is and how, eventually when it's going to come out so they can, because we want everybody to go. I'll tell you, if they haven't gotten this book, go get this book.
Absolutely.
This is powerful.
It's a game changer.
And for families, for kids, for adults, it works. There's some great stuff in here. So tell everybody about your next book.
So my next book is Friendship Skills for Neurodivergent Adults. I have been working with adults always, but I've spent the past few years really honing my neuroaffirming strategies for adults to make friends. We do friendship differently, so we have to have different strategies. It's the same publisher. I'm so lucky. And it will be out in April of 2026. Nice. So I've turned it in. I'm going to get back at it soon. Yeah. And if you go to author Caroline M, my Instagram, I talk a lot about different strategies, but I'll be also announcing book stuff. I haven't announced yet because they're like, it's so far away, but I'm like, no, but it's coming.
Oh yeah.
It's not far away. It's only 6 months out, 7 months out.
I know, that's how I feel. I'm like, we got to talk about it.
Exactly.
Good for you.
Exactly.
Good for you. So go ahead. So anything else you want to share with our listeners today that can change and impact their child?
Or anything that we left out?
Anything we left out, please.
I think one of the things I want to say is that, that resilience research shows that if kids feel they have someone to turn to, someone who can help them with difficult situations, someone who can teach them the skills, they have greater resilience and self-confidence. So parents sometimes feel ill-equipped. They sometimes feel like they don't know what to do, but just being there and being the kid's partner and collaborator in this, don't blame and shame. There's just no point. ADHD kids don't mean to do stuff, and they do stuff. but the more you're their partner, the more they will feel empowered and like they have the tools. You know what? I know I can turn to my mom. I know I can turn to my dad. And I think it's really important for parents to understand that, and to really understand that like having someone to talk to is really important. And I just want to give you hope. I've seen this change hundreds of times. And you know, with ADHD kids, sometimes they resist help. And I get that. And that's why a lot of Why Will No One Play With Me is about how to have those difficult conversations. Because, you know, sometimes you offer something that you think is a great idea. You're willing to put the resources to it. You're sacrificing. And they're like, nah, I don't think so.
Right.
Yeah. So good. See, the other thing that I got out of what you said is, you know, like you found drama. So that helped you. So what we encourage is to find a passion, something that you love. So like in our case, what we found for Anthony was he loved martial arts. It helped him. And he excelled. He loved cars, motorcycles. He just loved things that were fast, which was great, fit in perfectly to him. But the idea is to find your passion out there. If you're listening, Caroline, that was just awesome, was tremendous. You know, help your child to find the passion, something that they love to do, and be their partner, be their friend. It's so important. Absolutely. You know, I mean, so we love the episode. That was just great. It touched us in a special way because Anthony struggled with friends, and you know, you have so much to share, and we're looking forward to your next book. Again, everybody, please go get this book. If you haven't heard, you know, if you haven't gotten it, go get it. It's so helpful, and it's helpful for adults too, because we learned a lot from reading through. Yeah. So it helps everybody. And this, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and with the right tools, every child can learn to connect, to relate, and to belong.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, you know, I think it's kind of like math. You know, not everybody gets math, and we don't shame and blame them. We get them a tutor, we get them extra help. Some people come to friendship naturally, and they're really good at it. And then other people don't. And I think it's something we need to accept. Some people don't know how to make friends. And maybe they actually know how to do math. That's actually the irony of many of my clients, right? Like they know how to do something really hard.
That's so
They don't know how to do something else hard, which is to make friends. So I think we have to like remove the stigma from that. Like, yeah, some people struggle, and it's just not something they come to intuitively.
No, it's so true. Well, those listening, this conversation is all part of our mission to uplift families and honor the memory of our son, Anthony, whose kindness and love continue to inspire us. You know, and we hope this conversation inspired you today. We love Caroline, and we love what you do. We love the help that you're giving to the kids that we bring to you and the families we bring to you. And we're dedicated to helping kids with ADHD and provide families with their roadmap to really help them socially, emotionally, and academically. So if this touched your heart, come join us. Come follow our podcast. Listen in, subscribe. And we always like to close with a few things. And Casey, first, you're going to close with our message for Back to School Month.
Right. And I also want to mention, Caroline, you do have a podcast as well.
That's
I forgot to ask you how people could find you, but I've been watching your podcast. I really love it.
Oh, thank you. I'm just getting started. I've been meaning to do a podcast forever. Yeah. And I finally, I was interviewing all these people for the book, and I was like, wait, I should put these interviews out. Yeah. So it's called the ADHD Social Podcast. Thank you. Playbook Podcast. Sorry. And, it's the ADHD Social Playbook Podcast, and it's on Spotify and Apple. And I'm probably going to expand because Apple's sort of a little bit touchy and hard to get stuff going on, whereas Spotify is easy. So I'm probably going to expand even more. But it's all about the things that affect how we socialize, and experts who can offer really deep things. And it's not always the usual suspects. I love to go into different areas of the world and like bring in people in the ADHD space have never heard of, who have like the greatest stuff. Like I just had this person on who has all this great stuff on self-regulation. And so I like doing that because I think, you know, I'm a seeker of answers. Like if people say something can't be done, I'm like, oh, but it can.
Yeah.
There's always a way.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we got started too, because we were talking to you and other ADHD coaches, and everybody kind of does something different in the ADHD world. And we were like, we need to we're talking to these people anyway, so let's just get them on a podcast so we can have this information and share it with, with the parents or whoever is hopefully watching us. So, but yes, thank you for that. So as we close today's episode, we invite you to remember, as we head back to school, let's remind every child that they are more than a grade or a diagnosis. They are capable, kind, and uniquely wired for greatness. Let the school year be one of understanding, encouragement, and the courage to be yourself. We wish every student the best as they go back to school.
Yes, we do. And we always like to close with our motto. So I think you know it, Caroline. Today
is the best day of your life.
And
tomorrow will be even better.
Today is the best day of your life, and tomorrow will be even better. Post it on your refrigerators, your mirror, and share it with everybody. And remember this too: life is better with you. We want everybody to know that they are valuable, no matter where they're at. Thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you,
Caroline. Thank you so much. We loved having you.
Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for spending time with us today.
If you like today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use the information. And remember, a little bit of kindness goes a long way, especially for those kids with ADHD. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to our podcasts. We really appreciate you listening to them. And hopefully you're gaining a lot from the information that we share. Now we're here to ask you to help us. Help us to help these kids. Your donation is an investment in helping a child with ADHD and helping a family that can't afford the cost of care. Our QR codes are below. Every dollar we raise goes directly into helping these kids to thrive, and we get them the help they need, specifically the care from our care model that they need. So we hope you'll make a donation, become part of our community and donation community. You'll get newsletters and updates periodically, and we'd love to have you part of it. So thank you very much, and appreciate your consideration and your time. Best.